All right, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to the August edition of our BCHA virtual event series presented by Fortis BC. My name is Kelsey and I'm the communications manager at the BC Hotel Association. We are very excited to bring you today's session on creating safer spaces with Go2HR that will explore how to empower your workplace. In case you are not already aware, Go2HR has a really incredible suite of safer spaces training that is quick, it's bite-sized, and it's highly educational. Everyone on our team at the BCHA has completed it, and we were so impressed. We really wanted to create a space for us to have a bit more of a conversation about it. We started things off with a quick poll. It's the question on everyone's mind this summer with, I was actually surprised there's not more Oppenheimer, but Barbie has really been the clear winner. So we asked what recent summer blockbuster were you or are you most excited to see? And yeah, it looks like it's Barbie summer for sure. So thank you all for participating in that poll. To begin, I would like to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from Vancouver, located on the unceded and ancestral territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations, which has been stewarded by them since time immemorial. Before we jump into our panel, I would also like to acknowledge our sponsor, Fortis BC, who has made today's session possible. Fortis has really been doing an incredible job of moving forward to meet BC's diverse energy needs, and they've been a really great partner of ours. They've been really prioritizing investments in energy efficiency and expanding their supply of low carbon renewable natural gas. So if you want more information, you can visit fortisbc.com, or you can also reach me at kelsey@bcha.com and I will put you in touch with our contacts there. At this time, it is an honor for me to introduce Cindy Conti. She's the HR consultant for Vancouver Coast and Mountains at Go2HR. Cindy is a hospitality industry veteran of over 20 years. She has seamlessly navigated operational roles in hotels, ski resorts, before becoming a force in human resources. She has extensive experience, including corporate talent and culture at Accor, and she brings over 15 years of HR leadership to our discussion today. Cindy, we are very in awe of all of the work you are leading at Go2HR, and we're really thrilled to have you with us today. A quick note to everyone, we do have a Q&A open, so if you have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. We will be taking some time at the very end just to go over some questions. So please, throughout the duration, pop your questions in there and we'll be sure to get them answered. And with that, I will pass things over to Cindy.
Great. Thank you so much, Kelsey. And thank you for having me. Hold on, I gotta share my screen. Okay. Kelsey, if you could just let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Great. Well, it's great to be here with all of you hotel peeps. I hold a special place in my heart for the hotel industry. So I am pleased to be joining you from my home office today, located on the traditional unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nation, where I do have the privilege to work and play. Great. So I just thought I'd briefly go through the agenda so you know what is up and coming over the next 45 to 50 minutes, because I want to make sure I am on time. I'll give a brief introduction as to who Go2HR is, an understanding of workplace sexual harassment. I will introduce the course, Safer Spaces, the suite of courses, Safer Spaces, get into a discussion on workplace roles and responsibilities, and how you can actually operationalize this training. So prioritizing sexual harassment awareness training within your workplace, which will lead to creating more respectful workplaces. And we'll leave some time for Q&A at the end, as Kelsey just mentioned. So I believe most of you on this call are familiar with us at GoToHR, but in case you are not, I've got an intro slide here. So GoToHR, we're a nonprofit association supporting businesses in BC's tourism and hospitality industry. We offer various programs, which you're going to hear about more today, specifically safer spaces, but also tools, information, as well as one-on-one consulting services to elevate employers' human resources and health and safety practices, and not to mention that also psychological health and safety practices as well. So we educate, train current and future workforces, and we inform government, stakeholders, and communities on labor market conditions and strategies. Our purpose is to drive strong workforces and safe workplaces that deliver world-class tourism and hospitality experiences here in the province of BC. We receive funding through various provincial government sources, including WorkSafe BC, most recently the Ministry of Tourism, Arts, Culture and Sport, as well as Destination BC. I encourage you to check out our website if you're not already familiar with GoToHR at gotohr.ca, where you'll find a number of our industry-only resources, industry-only job board. We've got labor market information, as well as a variety of training programs, and a wealth of HR and occupational health and safety information. We also produce a monthly e-newsletter for the industry, for employers, as well as job seekers. So thank you for the introduction, Kelsey. I wanted to mention that I'm here representing all of us HR consultants at GoToHR. So there are 6 of us in total here to support the industry in areas of human resources and health and safety. I myself am the regional HR consultant for the Vancouver Coast and Mountain region. And as you can see here, I'm a part of a network of 6 HR consultants hired throughout the province, covering each of BC's tourism industries to help you on this call with workforce matters on an as-needed basis. And there is no cost for the one-on-one consulting services that we provide. So I'd like to start off with a few poll questions. And I think Kelsey's going to do some work on the back end there. But the first question here is, do you currently conduct sexual harassment awareness training for your employees? Oh, wow, this is great. And just really trying to gauge where we're at in terms of the participants on this call. Okay. Neck and neck, 50-50. And Kelsey, let me know when you're going to stop the poll.
Poll is stopped.
Great. Okay. Wow. Very interesting. 50-50. So this is good. And again, I am going to go through a lot of the basics. So some of it might be repeat for those of you that already implement a program, but it'll be great review with some of the tips that I'll be offering. Goal number 2. Do you currently have a code of conduct or a respect in the workplace policy that outlines acceptable workplace behavior? And Kelsey, it looks like I think everyone's responded. Great. So that's good to hear. The majority of you already have a policy in place. Goal number 3. Oh, looks like I'm not able to advance my slide. Do your employees know what to do if they experience or witness sexual harassment? And I think what I'm trying to get at here is if your policy includes steps on the steps that your employees need to take if they do experience or witness sexual harassment in the workplace. Okay, that's great to hear. The majority of you have responded yes. Okay, number 4, do you know what to do if an employee reports an incident of sexual harassment to you? And assuming that most of you on this call are in a management or supervisory role within your organization. Okay, very good. We are going to get into a little bit about what to do and how to respond. So this is good to see, although good to see as well that the majority of you know what to do. Great. Thank you so much for answering those questions. It gives me a good indication of where you guys are all at on this, those of you who are participating on the call. Okay, so I'd like to get started by sharing some foundational information so you have a better understanding about workplace harassment, sexual harassment, and I'll go through some interesting statistics that are actually quite recent, so very relevant to what we are dealing with in our workplaces today. So what percent of Canadian employees do you think have experienced some form of violence and harassment at work? I'm going to give you the answer here. 70%. Is this result surprising to you? So this number actually comes from a relatively recent survey that was conducted over a 6-month period, actually during the pandemic, that ended in April 2021. So late 2020, ending in April 2021. The survey was conducted by the Canadian Labour Congress in partnership with researchers at Western University and the University of Toronto. So in total, there was just under 5,000 participants, ranging in age from about 30 to 59 years old. The findings from the survey can be found in the Respect at Work report, which shows that 70% of the survey respondents experienced at least one form of harassment and violence or sexual harassment and violence in the 2 years prior to completing the survey. Surprisingly, 88% of the respondents who experienced harassment and violence were either transferred, suspended, fired, or lost a shift, while 70% had to miss work due to the negative effects. And maybe not so surprising, women, members of the LGBTQ2S+ community, people of color, and Indigenous peoples were found to more likely experience toxic work environments and sexual harassment. The study also took a closer look at reporting incidences of sexual harassment. So it is interesting to note that of those who did report harassment and violence or sexual harassment and violence, the majority felt that reporting made no difference or made the situation worse. And most oftentimes, these instances do go unreported. So there are definitely barriers that can prevent you from reporting. So here on the screen, you can see a list of top 5 reasons in that report for not reporting sexual harassment, with the top reason representing 40% of respondents. Other barriers included social, so being discouraged by others, power inequality dynamics, and financial, so the cost of legal representation and the time off work. So within these barriers, we can identify some things that we can do as a leadership team to proactively set ourselves and individuals within our respective groups up for success, such as communicating, educating employees with training on what is acceptable and not acceptable, who employees can go to for support if something does happen, what their options are for disclosing and reporting, and really trying to take away that stigma around the feelings that it's a taboo topic. And all these questions will be explored in greater detail once you take the Safer Spaces courses. So how we handle these situations is really important, as you can see. Although your operations will move on quite quickly from an incident, being involved on a personal level with this type of situation, you carry it with you. And if it isn't dealt with, it can be detrimental to a person, whether they're the target, a witness, a bystander, or whomever. So hostile work environments can definitely negatively impact your company culture and overall employee productivity. So what are the top 3 public spaces that Canadians report experiencing unwanted sexual behavior? bars, restaurants, and sidewalks, according to a Statistics Canada report. So I wanted to highlight these stats in that report, as these do include workplaces within the hotel industry. 25% of women and 17% of men experience sexual misconduct in their workplace, as reported in another StatsCan report released in late 2021. So another recent report. And in the same report, over 25% of employees didn't feel like they had enough information on what to do or where to go to access resources related to sexual harassment. So you can see from these stats that it pays to invest in training your teams and why your employees expect it. In the long run, you will be saving yourself much headache, costs, and potential loss of productivity. So set a positive example by prioritizing and offering sexual harassment training. So the umbrella of bullying and harassment encompasses a number of different actions and behaviors. Not an exhaustive list. Here you can see a few examples from this page here. So sexual harassment would fall under the umbrella of bullying and harassment. Although WorkSafe BC doesn't specifically use the word sexual harassment, it is still a form of bullying and harassment. So if you're reading information on the WorkSafe BC site, please keep that in mind. Sexual harassment is not always about sexual behavior towards a certain person, but could be a negative comment about transgender people as a group, for example. So although teasing or offhand comments may seem minor at first, behaviors can be upsetting and have a negative emotional effect. And if this type of disrespect isn't stopped and corrected, it could escalate to varying degrees, including violence. For example, a lighthearted conversation about an enjoyable weekend could take a turn if the topic of conversation turns to talking about one's sex life, whether boasting or complaining. Or what one may consider to be a harmless action of pushing hair out of someone's face. A supervisor pushing hair out of someone's face of a worker would be seen as harassment due to the power differential and the supervisor having crossed a touch barrier. Our Safer Spaces courses address how disrespectful behavior can escalate and how your behavior could be perceived by others, even though maybe your intent wasn't to be disrespectful. So I'll go through some definitions here. The definition of bullying and harassment is when someone takes an action that he or she knew or reasonably ought to have known would cause that worker to be humiliated or intimidated. Though sexual harassment is not included in this statement, employers really do have a legal duty around preventing bullying and harassment, which also includes sexual harassment. Definition of sexual harassment is the conduct of a sexual or gender-based nature that is unwelcome and unacceptable and detrimentally affects the work environment or leads to negative job-related consequences. So keep in mind that this includes behavior that belittles, demeans, or even humiliates someone based on gender-related qualities as well. So where can workplace harassment happen? As workplaces, communities, society, and even technology evolves, it's really important to identify where workplace harassment can take place, because it can occur beyond our actual physical workplace. So as an example, not only do your guest services team have to deal with upset customers in person, your reservation agents or call center agents deal with upset customers over the phone. And with the increase in virtual Zoom, Teams calls, text messaging, email, social media, and all the virtual platforms that are out there, workplace harassment can really occur online, virtually, and anywhere. Other places that harassment can occur are during work-related events, such as your annual holiday party or your summer party, or business-related travel. And then there's that gray area between work and social. As an example, some of you likely offer staff housing. Are you at work or are you not at work? If you visit the hotel on a day off or stay after work for a meal or a drink in the restaurant, and you're interacting with your coworkers, consider evening and night shift workers when supervision is limited, or consensual relationships between coworkers that can negatively turn, a breakup could happen and affect the workplace. And then also domestic relationships that can potentially spill over into your work environment. So I'd like to highlight a few examples that you may see happen in your own workplaces and that I've seen in my own experience, in order for you to see what could happen in your own work environments. A guest calling a worker a derogatory name, making unwelcome comments about someone's appearance or personal traits, unwelcome physical contact or sexual gestures, including staring, leering, patting, pinching, and some others that you can see on this list here. A story that I wanted to share with you is that of a young female worker, my sister actually, and I got consent from her to share this story with you guys. So she worked in an environment in her early 20s where men were more prominent. And she was a young worker. It was maybe her second job. It was common for the male coworkers to joke amongst themselves, verbally insult one another in a joking manner. But one particular male coworker would use a rolled up piece of paper and tap and hit her on her behind. It wasn't uncommon for this particular individual to act this way with other coworkers as well. There were other instances of the joking behavior that this harasser likely thought were harmless jokes, but my sister didn't want to deal with it, nor did she feel that her direct manager would do anything about it. And so she had just ended up quitting and never ended up reporting it. Here's some examples of what is not workplace harassment. So offering constructive feedback, guidance, or advice about work-related behavior and performance, as many of you or managers and supervisors do, wouldn't be considered harassment, but you do want to ensure that your managers, new managers, supervisors are providing feedback to your workers in a respectful manner. So workplace conflict and others that you can see on the list here. More examples are also provided in the Safer Spaces training course as well, as specific definitions as it does relate to sexual harassment, such as sexual assault, sexual misconduct. So I don't want to leave this topic without discussing risk factors within our industry, and they are not the same for every workplace, even within the same subsector, such as accommodation. So the tourism and hospitality industry employs a high percentage of new and young workers, as you already know, as well as seasonal and temporary workers, many of who are from other countries with English being their second language. There's often circumstances where the lines between work and socializing are blurred. Approximately 30% of people working in BC's tourism hospitality industry are considered young workers under the age of 25. So their lack of experience and reluctance to speak up and ask questions really does expose them to a higher degree of risk. For many young workers, a job in tourism hospitality is often their first experience in the workplace, and it can be overwhelming and intimidating. So many of you employ a high number of seasonal and temporary workers, and even though they're not employed for long term, you are still required to provide these workers with the necessary information, instruction, and training to ensure their health and safety while they're working. So this includes information about bullying and harassment, as well as sexual harassment, which is what we're talking about today. So consider that international workers could have different ideas about what is and what isn't sexual harassment, and really might be accustomed to different workplace rules. So it really is up to you as their employer or supervisor to explain those steps that you're taking to prevent sexual harassment in your workplace and how it's going to be handled if it does happen. Specifically within the hotel industry, there's a number of risk factors that include anywhere from shift work, working alone, as some of your individuals might do so on your maintenance team or security, working with limited or no supervision, such as your overnight team, your night audit team, that could lead to a greater level of vulnerability if not appropriately managed. So take time to assess risks in your own workplace. Proactively look for situations where your workers could experience harassment, whether it's from guests, other staff members, or even a supervisor, and then address these situations by putting protections in place. By assessing the risks ahead of time, it will allow you to understand where protection is needed for your employees and where your attention may need to be focused on. This is also a great opportunity for you to involve your joint health and safety committees by having them assist in conducting a risk assessment. And I believe some of you on this call who already hold your core certification should already be familiar with this, as you would have gone through this process already. Okay, so let's dive in to Safer Spaces, the initiative. So Safer Spaces is actually a 3-year initiative that's been led by GoToHR through funding from Justice Canada and developed in collaboration with an advisory committee made up of representatives from our industry, likely including some participation from some of you who've joined us today. We are currently in year 3, as you can see from this slide. So the Safer Spaces initiative is comprised of an educational campaign as well as an awareness building campaign. Safer Spaces raises awareness about sexual harassment in the workplace. And we now are able to offer 2 self-paced free online learning courses. One is focused on the employer, owners, or anyone in a management supervisory role. And the other is for your frontline workers to help prevent and address sexual harassment in tourism and hospitality workplaces. You can see some of the Safer Spaces characters here on this slide. And as we've entered into year 3 earlier this year, we're really focused on raising awareness within the industry. So it includes doing webinars like this to BCHA members to really encourage implementation of sexual harassment prevention best practices and promoting our suite of training courses for all audiences. So let's take a closer look at each of these courses. So I hope some of you are already familiar with this course. It was released last year in 2022. So geared for a manager supervisor, this course walks you through a scenario in a resort town located in the interior of BC. The story opens with Joe, as you can see on the screen here. He's the general manager of a lodge at the resort, and he's faced with a potential disclosure of sexual harassment from one of his coworkers. Here you'll see some of the key takeaways from the course. As you go through the story, you explore how Joe handles a disclosure, who he calls on for support, the advice he receives, the steps that he takes to respond to the employee. So Joe learns quickly about the topic of sexual harassment and how best to respond to that employee. It really kind of makes you consider how you might respond if you were faced with a similar situation. The course itself is about 3 hours in length from beginning to end. But because it is self-paced, you don't necessarily need to complete it all in one sitting. The course also includes a toolkit of valuable resources, including tip sheets on best practices, sample forms, sample policies, templates, links to various website resources, which I'll go into more detail a little bit later in this presentation. So we're very excited about the launch of our worker course, which became available just earlier this year. This course empowers employees to speak up and seek help if an employee or coworker experiences sexual harassment. So same with the manager course. This course is available online. It's also self-paced and is approximately about 90 minutes in length. With similar characters as the manager course, here are some of the key takeaways here. So it includes foundational basic knowledge on identifying what sexual harassment is. There's some examples of what it is, what isn't sexual harassment, understanding the concept of consent, examples of giving and not giving consent, how to go about disclosing or reporting sexual harassment if it does happen to you, how to report if you witness sexual harassment as a bystander, and addresses how you can contribute to a safer, more respectful workplace. So note that before you launch this course with your employees, you want to ensure that your managers have taken the manager supervisor course, so they're prepared with how to respond to any incidences if they're brought to their attention. And I will also mention that this course is very beneficial for your managers to take as well. Okay, so let's move into workplace roles and responsibilities. And I think I have another poll here. Kelsey, if you can help me out. So who is responsible for preventing sexual harassment in the workplace? We've got employer ownership, managers or supervisors, employees, guests or workplace visitors, A and B, so employer ownership, managers and supervisors, or F, all of the above. Sorry, I gave a lot of options here. And Kelsey, if you could let me know when you close out the poll.
That's closed.
Okay, great. Okay, so the majority of you have answered F, and that is the correct answer, all of the above. I'm going to get into a few more details in the next few slides for those of you that did not choose F, but everyone, regardless of their position within the company, including your guests, plays a role when it comes to preventing sexual harassment. So I'm going to go through each of those levels in just a moment, but really you can set the tone with your guests and visitors too. And, letting them know what you're doing to prevent sexual harassment within your business through website messaging really does go a long way as well. Okay, so it shouldn't be surprising that employers, the ownership group, are the ones with the most responsibility. The policies and procedures that address behavior in the workplace can live within a bullying and harassment prevention program. So as employers, you are required to provide a safe and healthy workplace. Train your staff on expected behaviors, outline those policies, respond and report to these situations, and investigate any reported situations. So employers should also be working on creating a culture of consent where your employees feel respected and valued. There's many supports for you when you're executing some of your responsibilities, whether it's through templates that we have available on our website at GoToHR, WorkSafe BC, as well as one-on-one consultations with one of our HR consultants, health and safety team, or even psychological health and safety coaches. So we are all here to help you execute these processes. You're responsible for both the physical and psychological safety of your employees when it comes to the workplace. So providing support and protecting privacy is key in this situation. So managers and supervisors play a very unique role in the workplace when it comes to harassment. They must understand what their role is and follow to enforce the workplace policies that have been put in place. So depending on the procedures within your policy, your managers may be the ones who employees report issues to. By no means should they have to deal with the situation on their own. Employers should have supports in place to help their managers and supervisors with these situations. The Safer Spaces course for managers does include valuable support, as I mentioned, supporting resources, which I will showcase later in the presentation. Some other responsibilities include practicing consent, early recognition, and redirecting unnecessary behavior if needed as well. So responsibilities of employees includes, not surprisingly, not engaging in harassing behavior, understanding and following the workplace policies and reporting procedures, prevent bullying and harassment, and practicing consent as well. So bullying and harassment is required to be reported to the employer. But with the unique variables of sexual harassment, the decision really lies with the employee to determine if they want to formally report what happened to them. They also have an option to disclose, which is different from reporting, and that option should be offered to employees. So I'll go into a bit more detail on the differences between reporting and disclosing. And so your guests, contractors, and clients. How do you communicate responsibilities to your guests, customers, and clients? Consider creating a guest code of conduct that holds your guests in your workplace accountable for their behavior. Communicate it to your guests before their stay, their visit, even with some contractors that might have to be on property for extended periods of time. Proactively prevent questionable occurrences as they already know the expectation and the consequences when you let them know in advance. Provide staff with something to reference when interacting with guests, especially with reoccurring offenders. Getting input from staff on what they would like to see reflected in this code of conduct will really reflect your commitment and generate the buy-in from them as well. So the Safer Spaces courses includes customer-facing examples throughout and recognizing different workplace situations where sexual harassment can occur. So why is it important to prioritize sexual harassment and awareness training? Effective training can be used to help prevent instances of sexual harassment in the workplace and can really strengthen your workplace culture. So prevention is key. So let's take a look at how you can prioritize sexual harassment awareness training. So part of taking a proactive approach is developing a training plan. So in your training plan, you will need to identify who will need to take what training and how you communicate the plan. So clearly you want everyone to take the training, depending on what role they play within the organization. But communicating the plan to your existing employee group would come first and foremost. So some of your employees may have started with the company quite a number of years ago. So they might need some reminding on what the specifics of the company's expectations are and what the employee's responsibilities are. So reinforcing training will also help it stay relevant, will help your employees know what's expected of them, and really shows the company's commitment to a respectful workplace. And once you have all that in place, make sure that you monitor and update your training plan as needed. So when it comes to delivering the training, I mentioned that you want to train everyone, but you want to focus on training your current staff, like I mentioned, but your current managers and supervisors first and foremost. They have specific responsibilities beyond a regular worker, and they need to know how to respond if something is disclosed or reported to them. So they need to know what to escalate, where they can get the support, or where they can even guide employees to get support if something was to happen, especially if the person in power is an alleged perpetrator. So once your managers are trained, focus on providing the Safer Spaces worker training to the rest of your employees and encourage your managers to complete this training as well. Set the right tone with your new hires by incorporating Safer Spaces training into your onboarding program. The Safer Spaces Manager course can also be incorporated into a leadership development program, maybe if you have one existing or are looking to create one, as well as used as a learning tool around having difficult conversations with their staff. So I mentioned getting into more detail about disclosing versus reporting. So I wanted to touch on this very important takeaway from the Safer Spaces course for employers and supervisors. And for those of you on the call who've already completed this course, it's a great review for you as well. So the meaning of disclosing and reporting, as there is a difference. Disclosing is telling someone about an incident of harassment in an informal context. Reporting is providing a formal statement or report about an incident of harassment, which could lead to an investigation and other formal follow-up. So when developing your training program, you really want to determine the steps that an employee would need to take when disclosing or reporting a case of harassment. So first of all, who can employees go to? Typically, the person would be the employee's direct manager. So be sure to identify an alternative individual should the complaint be towards that employee's manager. Typically, it would be either an HR representative or the most senior manager within the department, a department head, or even the general manager of the hotel. But understand that disclosing can happen in a casual, informal way. So being the target, someone else in the workplace, and recognizing that it is happening is key. A disclosure doesn't automatically lead to action or an investigation unless the target wants this. So how do employees report? Is there a form that employees can complete? And if so, how can they access this form? Is it online? Is it a paper form? You may also want to create a way to confidentially submit a complaint for employees that may not feel comfortable with disclosing or reporting. Maybe it's a confidential email, or you're enlisting the services of a third-party whistleblower program. And then ensure employees understand that there is no fear of retaliation, that there will be no corrective action brought against anyone should they choose to disclose or even report an incident of harassment. So each of your workplaces will be a little bit different, but all workplaces must formally identify the person or people who can report incidents. You can report incidences of harassment or sexual harassment too. So our last section on creating respectful workplaces. So tips on getting the most out of Safer Spaces training. I mentioned earlier about incorporating Safer Spaces into your onboarding program. So take a look at your current onboarding program. Review, monitor, update the program if changes are needed. But your onboarding program likely starts with a first day orientation. But remember that onboarding generally covers an employee's first 3 months of employment. So consider training your employees on sexual harassment prevention and health and safety from day one, or at least during their first week of employment. So you're setting them up for success. Although the Safer Spaces training courses are online and self-paced, depending on your organization, your employees might not have online access during their workday. So intentionally set aside time in a quiet space with online access or you might prefer to have employees complete in a classroom setting or a combination of online and classroom. Depending on how many employees you have to train, you could deliver the training to a group with an opportunity to have discussions around different scenarios and case studies, depending on the setup of your workplace. If you don't prioritize this training from the beginning of employment, think about what message this could be sending to your new hires. That this training isn't as important as other topics, that you don't think sexual harassment happens in your workplace, or that there isn't enough time to do the training. And remember that the training focuses on preventing sexual harassment by building a more respectful workplace culture, which really is a positive thing. So take time to review your policies. Do your employees know where to find these policies? I know that many of you have new young workers and managers who need and will greatly benefit from leadership training. And you can't be at work 24/7. So you need to ensure that you're preparing your leaders to be able to respond to these situations. And finally, a Safer Spaces toolkit is included in the Safer Spaces Manager Supervisor course. So within this toolkit, you'll find a number of links to various websites and resources, which you can download, personalize some of the templates, and really learn how to develop a code of conduct for your own workplace if you don't already have one, a tip sheet on witnessing sexual harassment as a bystander, sample policy templates on workplace harassment, discrimination, bullying, and violence prevention. In addition to the toolkit, there's also gender resources, including a mini course on gender, and resources to help you learn more about sexual harassment based on gender identity and sexual orientation. And there's also a section on intersectionality, the concept that all oppression is linked, looking at the meaning and how it relates to sexual harassment. And both Safer Spaces courses also include a glossary of terms that are used throughout both courses. So it's my last slide, but at GoToHR, we're focused on a couple of other initiatives that I wanted to share with you besides Safer Spaces, but all encompassing that all of these initiatives are aimed at building respectful workplaces. So in addition to the Safer Spaces training. GoToHR and the Canadian Mental Health Association, the CMHA of BC, have partnered to provide psychological health and safety support, resources, and training for employers and workers within tourism and hospitality. So through CMHA BC's Hub for Workplace Mental Health, we're able to offer the CARE certification program. Some of you may already be familiar with this, but it is a free online 3-level training program, which really provides some foundational skills in understanding workplace mental health and aimed at reducing the stigma and start having positive conversations about workplace mental health. We also have a psychological health and safety coach on staff at GoToHR who's available to provide one-on-one support to industry employers. And finally, we also recently embarked on an equity, diversity, and inclusion, EDI, initiative to further round out our existing offerings aimed at supporting the industry in creating respectful workplaces. We've just started our journey in the EDI space. So we've set up an EDI framework, which can be used as a tool to help your business either start your own journey or really to continue growing your own practices in this space. We're currently working on building out our resource hub, so more to come soon, so please check back on our website, but it will include valuable resources and also foundational training for the industry. Creating a respectful workplace not only reduces your risk of legal liability, it will also strengthen and develop positive professional relationships among your employees. So providing a safe and respectful workplace also positively impacts employee retention and eventually reducing turnover. And that's it for today. I think I'm on time.
Cindy, that was incredible. Thank you so much. Honestly, we can't say enough good things about all of the work you and the GoToHR team has led. It's been an enormous effort, and you have developed so many amazing resources. So we really appreciate it. Particularly for our industry, we deal with not only our own coworkers, but also we're guest facing as well. So there's a lot of room for this kind of activity to happen. So prevention is very important. And also to everyone on this webinar, it speaks volumes to the fact that you're willing to do this training before an incident happens, because you always want to make sure you're prepared, right? Um, so at this time, we will go into some Q&A. So if you have a question, please feel free to use the Q&A function at the bottom. We do have a couple questions. First question for you, Cindy, is are employers required to have a bullying and harassment policy and a separate policy for sexual harassment?
So yes to the first part of that question, that you are required to have a bullying and harassment policy in place, not necessarily a separate one for sexual harassment, because it is all encompassing under harassment, as per Work Safe BC especially, but it doesn't hurt to have the extra added information regarding sexual harassment. As I mentioned, if you don't talk about it, you kind of turn a blind eye, or you don't feel that it exists. So always, great to kind of highlight that piece, but not legislated per se.
Absolutely. Yeah, transparency is certainly key for sure. So here's an example question. What if I see or hear something inappropriate between coworkers and a guest? What's the best way to deal with that?
Depending on the workplace, you really want to go through your policy to ensure that you're letting your employees know what to do. But in general, as an employee or as a worker, my advice is to go to your manager, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation. But ensure that your policy is specific and lets your employees know that your first contact would be your direct manager. But if the manager is the perpetrator, what is that alternative option?
Absolutely. Here's another question. Do I need to appoint someone in my management team that will be the go-to person if someone wants to disclose or report an incident? If so, what kind of qualities should they have?
So depending on your workplace, I know that some of the smaller organizations out there may have a rotating manager on duty, or you may not know if your manager is on site at that moment in time. It might be helpful if you do have a point person, depending on your operations. So something to look for is, obviously it would be a manager that isn't new to their role, but someone that managers can easily access, if not during the day or the evening manager, whatever that shift work looks like. But it might not help to have a designated person depending on the size of your organization, the way that your operation works.
Absolutely. I have another question here. How do I use this safer spaces training in a classroom setting? This person said, I think our housekeeping team would benefit doing it in this format. Would I assign the course to myself and working in a class setting on this?
Yeah, and I can see the challenges that would go along with that, but really my suggestion is to set aside that time. If it means that you're facilitating the actual course, maybe try to do it in bite-sized pieces, but gather everyone in the room with a monitor. And yeah, maybe you could do it a little bit, 10 minutes every morning, or a little bit after maybe your shift briefing. So I'm going to assume that all of you have a shift briefing at the beginning of the day, in addition to the stretches for the housekeepers. Maybe do a quick 10 minutes and have it done throughout the course of a month even. Keeps the conversation going as well. But that would probably be a suggestion, so that you're not having to do the course and then figuring out an itinerary of the agenda of how you're going to present. That might be the easiest, quick and easy way to do it. Is the course is already set up to be start at any time, pick up at any time. So that might be more digestible for your employees to be able to take on that information. It is a lot of content as well. And I'm sorry if I rushed through the presentation because I wanted to make sure I got all that content in, but yeah.
Just speaking from experience doing the training, it was really easy just to kind of take some time throughout the day. And it wasn't like I had to do it all at once. It was kind of entertaining actually, and very engaging. And it really took you through a storytelling process, which I know training can be a little daunting sometimes, especially when you're sitting and doing it and you're on your own, but it's so well executed and definitely a really important resource for our industry. So thank you once again. Also, one more thing, we have a lot of hotels at part of the BCHA that don't really have the resources to have an HR team. just a reminder to everyone, Go to HR is a resource for you if and we have our consultants across, I say we because I consider myself part of your team sometimes.
Sure.
There's consultants across BC, so whatever region you are in, you have this amazing resource at your disposal, so be sure to make use of them.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning that, because
Mhm.
although I am specifically the regional consultant for Vancouver Coast and Mountain Region, I am facilitating this webinar on behalf of Go to HR. So I can definitely put you in contact with your local HR regional consultant. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me. My email address is there. If you forget my name, we also have a general HR inbox called hr@go2hr.ca, which is it's easy to remember. So please don't hesitate.
Perfect. Well, we don't have any more questions. So with that, I guess we'll wrap things up. I just wanted to let everyone know that we also have recorded this session. So we will be sending it out in our industry update newsletter, which will go out on Tuesday. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me and Cindy, and you can reach out to me at kelsey@bcha.com. Cindy, thank you once again for the session. It was really valuable, and we look forward to sharing it with our members.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Bye-bye.